The one that had the agenda, that's what I used because I think the email came through around 5:50. So I used the link that was in the base camp that had the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah.
We will make sure we have this cleaned up next time. So as we're all learning, appreciate you all's grace through this all. And is there anyone else that I may have missed? I think I've got everyone. I've got Charlene. Kyle, I've got you. Thomas, I've called you already. I think that's it, right? Okay, perfect. So. Well, maybe we'll have a few more join us, but first of all, welcome everyone. It's been a month since we have met before. And we're going to try to accomplish a few things in this meeting. Number one, we do have an agenda, but we also realize that it's probably an important time for us just to kind of reset on expectations and really just kind of spend a little bit of time of recentering on where we should be at in the process. I will tell you, we are not far behind. Actually, we're not far behind at all. But I do think we do need to spend some time on how we want to organize ourselves. I think last time we talked about splitting in the subcommittees, et cetera. But at the end of the day, we want to do what makes sense. And I think at that time, everyone agreed that that would be a good approach, is break into hiring and retention. But, you know, again, we realize people have day jobs, balancing family and just life in general. So we kind of just want to revisit and determine if that's the way we still want to go forward. And if so, you know, William and I will look to regroup and then really get us moving forward. And then we can really talk about, you know, where we need to make some adjustments as well. And then just kind of reflect on where we're supposed to be in this process, which again, I think you'll be refreshed to know that we're actually pretty right on point. And we'll talk about kind of what some of those next steps would look like. So with that, I just thought I would just start with asking, did anyone have a chance to review the article that I sent out? And just would love to hear your thoughts.
Yes, I did.
Oh, go ahead, Catherine.
Yeah, I did. I actually read it and I thought it was very informative, you know, talking about the workforce equity and about how we need to analyze the data, support and engage organization and creating a workplace culture. So I thought it was very informative and they had a lot of what interventions that can be used to increase workforce equity. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had a chance to review it, at least review it a little bit, and the implicit bias was the one that caught my attention. Part of the paper.
Great, thank you for that. Anyone else? Thomas?
Yes, I missed our last subcommittee meeting, and I had another conflict that night, but. I did think that I had seen something since then that did suggest how we might split into the two subcommittees that you had referenced earlier, hiring and then retention. And I thought in particular the article was very good at promoting some ideas that had been, I guess, bubbling up in my head about retention, since that was the committee that I guess I chose after I saw how others had split themselves up. And I think there's as much emphasis on retaining and offering opportunity to people once they're on board as an employee of Brookhaven, and paying as much attention to them. And I think the implicit bias issue is one where we can really start focusing on that for the retention side, because it's a matter of giving everyone an equal voice and equal opportunity once they are on board, and not letting any unaware of biases, implicit biases bubbling up that deny that opportunity for folks.
Absolutely. No, thank you for that. And, you know, I will say that when we met last time, Thomas, we spent time on the data that was sent out. So you may recall there was an email that had gone out, it had a lot of attachments. And the last call we spent a lot of time really, Helena was was on the spotlight, and we had a lot of questions for her, as you can imagine. And so since then, she has also provided us with additional data. So you know, you haven't missed a ton, but I would say that if you get a chance to go back, if you haven't already, to watch the recording from the first one, it may be helpful because
Okay.
you can get a sense of what type of questions that came up, and also get a sense of what questions you think still need to be answered. I think with the article, I'll share as well. I think the thing that really, in addition to what you all said, I think the thing that I think was really important was that they had the data piece as the first thing, because you really have to understand the data and really challenge the data, which is actually where we spent a lot of time last time, trying to really ask for more specifics, so that as we begin to dig into this work, we feel like we're equipped with the necessary insights. So, you know, as I thought about kind of where we were in the journey right now, you know, what I would just say is, if you have not spent a lot of time in the data as of yet, and again, we recognize we're all balancing just everything, so no worries. But if you haven't had a chance to dig into the data, I encourage you to do so, because that's going to really be the power behind how we make what recommendations we choose to bring forward. So I just will just challenge everyone, if you have not had a chance to do so, I really strongly encourage you to do so. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we want to start managing things, because I do realize that Basecamp is not for everybody. We have found it to be a little challenging to get people to engage on it. So that means we have to be agile and flexible with each other to figure out what makes sense for us. So we'll spend a little bit of time on that today as well. And then Helena's going to provide us with a little bit of insight into the data that she has provided. One thing I would just ask too is, as we go through this meeting, is think about things that you think, you know, even as Helena does the additional updates on the data that she's provided, and it's also posted on Basecamp, is think about, are there other questions? Are there other things that have come up after you read that article? Were there things that you thought to yourself, you know, I wonder if we should be, you know, dig more into that, or that would be a good piece of data to grab. So just would ask you to put your hats on and, you know, speak up after she speaks and let us know what additional data you think she needs to provide. And then, like I said, we'll spend a little bit of time talking about next steps. So I don't recall who's advancing the slides, but if you could go to the agenda. Perfect. So we'll spend some time kind of reflecting on phase 1 and 2, just to give you all comfort that even though we haven't had a lot of interaction since our last meeting, we've tried to leverage Basecamp, but you know, we technically are on track, so that's a good thing. But I thought, let's maybe use the front end of this, instead of driving right into the data, is really understanding what's going to work better for you all. Do you like the thought of breaking into these work teams? You know, what we don't want to do is make this feel extra cumbersome. We know that there's a lot of meetings and there's a lot of work we still have to do, but we also want to make sure we're meeting you where you are too. So last time we said, yeah, that would be a great idea, but maybe it's not a great idea anymore. Maybe it's just best that we all look at the data together and stay on, you know, stay as one team. And that's fine if that's the preference. Would also just love any feedback on your preferences and how you want to collaborate. So again, Basecamp was designed to not only be a repository so that everything is in one place and to make it easy to refer to things, but it also was intended to be a way to collaborate with one another, share information, so that everything doesn't have to be a meeting. So you could ask questions in Basecamp, you could, you know, we could share ideas with one another in Basecamp and all of that. Outside of that, if we do decide to do meetings, we do have to actually have a public meeting. We do have to make sure that there is 24 advance notice and an agenda, which has to be posted. So I just want to kind of share those nuances. However, if we do communicate email or if we do communicate via Basecamp, those are just ideas and exchanges. So I just want to put that out there just as thoughts, but I want to hear from you all on how do you all, what would work best for you so that we can begin to dig into this work on the data. So who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Initially, I thought I was getting a little bit overwhelmed by Basecamp. because I was getting all these emails. But then I went and downloaded the app. So when I downloaded the app, I found it much easier to manage the information. Like all the documents are in there. So I just go to what I'm assigned, which is hiring and retention, and I'm able to read and see what my requirement is. So I can say that since I downloaded the app, I found it much easier to manage and very easy to communicate and use it.
And what about your thoughts on the work teams? Do you like the thought of doing it the way we did? Do you think it would be better to just stay as one? And do you have any preference on ways to collaborate? Do you prefer the Zoom meetings, or would you like us to use email, or would you kind of lean towards Basecamp as a way to collaborate in between meetings?
I would lean to Basecamp because I have a daughter. I get communication from school. She plays sports. So if we use email, I think it may end up like missing some communication. I find Basecamp is the one place that I know I can go to. And in regards to if we should all work together in retaining or hiring, I am open to what the majority group goes with. I don't have any particular preference.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Tawana, for bringing this forward. I think that there, in the beginning of our Basecamp process, were just a lot of emails that came out because we were being pinged, but there wasn't anything actionable I thought that needed to be done. So it was like, what are the things, like what are these pings that are occurring? I also found out that you can reply through email back to Basecamp. So I think that has been helpful because I will be honest, I have so many apps on my phone that I am managing that another social media type app is just going to be a lot for me to deal with. But I think that the ability to figure out, if there's an actionable thing, that maybe that might be a way to kind of say, and I think that I did see that we missed a meeting. I don't check email on the weekend. I do email Monday through Friday because I'm so engrossed in it that anything that comes to the weekend, anything that comes to the weekend, I'm like, I am not, like, that's my time. I check out.
I respect that.
So I think just trying to ensure that, if it's an actionable, I don't know what the assignments thing does, if it lets you know that you have a task that you have to do in Basecamp. I don't know if there's a way to figure that out. But I think that is, as we're learning anything new, I think that's something that is important also to look at. I also am a fan. I think when we met last month, to break it into subgroups, I think that there's so much that happens and so many different things and ideas that the ability to have 2 or 3 people figure out something and then bring it forward. I know that's probably an additional meeting or additional time of communicating. But I just think about when we have 7 different voices on a call in an hour to get through something, I just don't think that it's going to be a great use of time to get things moving. So I think that is something that I think about when it comes to time and being cautious of that. So those are my 3 cents. I gave you an extra one.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you so much for your candor. Really appreciate it.
To be honest with you, I haven't had time to delve into the data yet or use Basecamp. I've been so overwhelmed. I did try to read that article that you sent out a couple of days ago. I thought that was important. I'll eventually get to that and start getting into the data. I think it's important, to break out in different groups into retention, hiring, retention. I think it'll make it maybe easier to manage all of this data and being able to maybe better, use our time a little bit better.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Ruben. Anyone else?
Yeah, I kind of piggyback off of Kyle. This is Charlene. When I started getting pinged, I was getting pinged on Basecamp and poked on Facebook and Twitter, and it's like, I don't know how to respond. What do I do? So poking and pinging doesn't work for me very well. I actually do better with email because I can look at it in real time, review it in real time, or I have ways that I categorize and put things in folders. And so I have an email system in place. So I don't struggle with email. I also like the smaller groups. I think I think less is best sometimes as it pertains to getting things accomplished and getting things done. So I would prefer, I'm not suggesting this, but I would prefer 1 or 2 quick 30-minute breakout meetings with a couple of people and knocking some things out versus an hour with not being quite as effective as it would be in a shorter meeting. So, and I desire the connection and the interaction. That's important to me. And I was thinking about that question on Basecamp. I think you asked the question one day recently, and I was thinking, so what would we have done if we could meet in person? You know, what would be the platform that we would use? How would we communicate? How would we break out? And all of those things. And so I think that's where wow, I really would like to touch people more often and have dialogue and kind of the back and forth on some things. So yes, so again, pinging and poking, no, that doesn't work for me. Emails are fine for me. And small 1, 2, 3, well, 2, 3, 4 people, I'm good with that also.
Okay, perfect. And I will say too, as a suggestion, Charlene, and we can take this offline, I do know there is a way. So let's just say the majority want to kind of give this Basecamp a try, because I know everybody's still trying to get comfortable with it. There is a way where you can update your settings. So if you don't want to get the pings and you just wanted to go to your email, you could actually leverage it that way. So that way, when you're checking your email and you click on it, it takes you to exactly to the location in Basecamp.
Okay.
We have not tried the what is Kyle, you said it, I think it's like the task list or what have you as of yet.
Yeah, the assignments, but I was also
Thank you.
saying, when I'm pinged, I think to Charlene's point, I just reply to the ping with anything. And then if you just reply through, because it sends you an email, if you reply to that email, it responds back to Basecamp. So I think that's, for me, is how I've used it. But yeah, the pinging and poking, I'm with Charlene on that. But yeah, the assignment one is what it was. Sorry.
Okay. So maybe we'll, William and and we may just spend some time testing out a couple things behind the scenes. We'll try to do that in the next couple of days so we can try to get some things moving along. Definitely great suggestions. And I would just say, it seems like, I know a couple other voices we may need to hear, but Tom, I saw that you said you agree. So I think that was about the breaking down the teams and keeping them as they were.
Yes.
And I think that with that, those small teams, so Mindy put in the chat, I don't know if you all saw that the policing subcommittee, they meet every other week. So maybe we can, William has the kind of the hiring aspect and I took retention. So if that works for you all, we could, use Basecamp still to collaborate, share information, assignments, but then maybe have a shorter meeting, like a 30-minute with just the sub team. And Charlene, I know that would exceed your 2 to 3 people, but there's only 5 people on the committee, so we'll just pull them in. But it would just be specific to the retention team, and so we'll try to leverage that. We'll play around with some things and try to streamline as much as possible and be as efficient with Basecamp. So I'm still learning it as well, to be quite candid. I've never used Basecamp before. But we're happy to try some new things, and we'll try the assignment task and see how that works. And in the meantime, I think with that, we know, the good thing is the committees are small. So if we find that, only 3 out of 5 are communicating, we'll just have to decide, like, gosh, well, it's probably just best to go ahead and quickly send an email, and so be it. So we'll figure it out and we'll play around with some things, but this is all helpful. Did anyone else have any thoughts or preferences? Okay. And I do just want to remind everybody, this particular meeting is actually typically not intended to solve anything. It actually is intended to come together as a committee to really just provide key updates. So I do just want to make sure I clarify that piece. So let's go to the next slide and maybe let's just review kind of where we are based on the phase 1 and phase 2 suggestions that were given to us from Chrysalis Labs. So I hope she doesn't mind that I hijacked and did a screenshot of her slides, but I did, I admit it. So March and April, you know, and I put in green, I tried to use kind of a little bit of a project management mindset. So those things were done. So, you know, we got the current policies and practices for the city of Brookhaven, as well as other data. And then we worked with Helena and others just to make sure that we had all the information that we could get, at least at the start. So I would say that those two things that we started and we did that. And then in April, you all recall that we had a meeting and we asked for additional data, which that data has now been provided. So doesn't mean that we won't ask for more or that we have all that we need, but at least from a standpoint of what the expectations were from March through April, we've definitely have met that. And then if we can go to the next slide. And so this is where we're at now. So we're in May, and it talks about using the data to identify inequities. And this means digging into that data. And that's why I would strongly suggest that if you haven't had a chance to really spend much time with it, I know it seems like a lot, but actually when you start going through the data, some of them are really short pieces of data. They're not long reads. So I would just ask that you either review it or even re-review it. And we haven't started that process. So you haven't missed anything. That will be up to us to your point, Kyle, make sure that that's very clear as an assignment. And one thing I do have a question about, and Mindy, I don't know if you're able to answer this or anyone else, but one of the things that we were asked to do was to use what's called a 4P assessment tool. And I apologize if I have missed this, but do we have that tool available or is it in the documents and I just overlooked it?
Yes, I believe it is uploaded to the executive committee Basecamp page. And I'm going to double check right now because I don't want to be wrong. But that was something, so in full transparency, that was something that we introduced at the executive committee, you know, the co-chair orientation. And as your liaisons and guides, I do think it's something that we need to refresh and just make sure it's top of mind and make sure that that's something that you're really using. And so for the meeting this month, which the timing, you know, because it's at the end of the month, is off. But I think the saving grace here is that you all are still sort of sifting through the data. And so it might set us back a little bit, but more time to look at the data. But you do have it, and I will make sure that I'll make sure that it's in there.
Okay. And then what we'll do is make sure that when we put the assignment up, if you will, is put what the specific task is, like what is it that we want everybody to look at? Because again, I know we'll have our breakout teams, but you know, making sure that everybody's kind of bringing their questions, thinking about what else. And so that way, when we do have that first kind of breakout meeting, you know, that shorter meeting, if you will, everyone will have reviewed the data, come with their own set of ideas or additional data points that they may need for us to talk about as a smaller work team. And then we can decide, do we have what we need? And then we can go into, you know, other aspects of the work and starting to go into that assessment tool, you know, or reset on anything. So we will get the tool out and make that part of the assignment. And I will get with William this week and we will regroup a little bit and then make sure we leverage the assignment task. And I do think that once we start getting that going and get some consistency with that, it'll start to feel like we're moving. So I see your note here, Mindy. Thank you. Okay, thank you so much. Perfect. Everybody taking a deep breath now and realizing we're actually, even though we haven't had a lot of meetings, we're actually not that far behind. I know I don't like to be behind. I don't know about you all, but but it feels good to know that we're on track. Like I said, we're all just trying to get familiar with this process and this journey. So and we're going to do it together, right? So thanks for all the input and candor tonight. It's really, really full. All righty. Well, if no questions on these two slides or clarity needed, then what I'd like to do is, even though the data is on Basecamp, we're going to kind of take a similar approach as last time. And Helena is with us, and she's going to provide an overview of the data that was uploaded. And again, just like before, if you have questions about anything that she is covering, Helena, I would probably just ask that you pause after each slide and just, you know, see if there's any questions, and that way we can attack each slide as you show them, and then and we'll go from there.
Sounds good. So I broke these up by the kind of the hiring and retention and stuff like that. And just so you guys are aware, for reference, that was uploaded into Basecamp on the 23rd of April. So if you're searching by a date, that is where it is. But I did create two folders, one is called hiring and the other one in retention for the data. So if you are looking for the data and you're not seeing it in your assigned folder, it's probably in the other folder. A couple of items, it could have went in either one. So we just uploaded in one, but knowing that all the data is up there.
Yeah, and it would be, just to clarify, it's in the documents and files. If you go into Basecamp, it's in the documents and files. And like she said, it's labeled hiring and the other one is labeled retention.
So in the hiring, you guys asked for some samples of interview questions. So I've uploaded a few samples, the assistant city manager, CFO, police officer, accounting clerk, finance director. So those interview sample questions have been uploaded into the system.
What do you recall the last time that the interview questions or interview guide was updated?
The interview questions are reviewed every time like a position comes open to see if there any maybe processes have changed, or there might be a new product or program that's being utilized that they want to see if someone has experience in. So those are reviewed as we're recruiting a new cycle. I'll say for the police officer position, because I feel like with that role, we can sometimes be recruiting more often during the year. We usually review those once a year.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I had a quick question as I'm looking at the police officer questions.
Mm-hmm.
There's a question that asks if there's a write-up or reprimand in the police file. Is that not something, I know that there's a big push right now to try and figure out how we are capturing that information across not only cities, but states. Is there another way that that is verified besides just asking the question?
Mm-hmm. Yep, we do a file review. So if a candidate gets to the point of a conditional offer, we do go to the agency and we go to previous agencies and pull that file, or do an open records request for the file to obtain that data to verify.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Is it also part of standard procedure that you always get 3 references or something like that before a hiring offer is made?
It's not standard practice. We usually do more with the background. It's more employment education verifications.
I was just thinking there was a lot more to the process than simply the questions you ask in an interview.
So today, just to maybe piggyback on what Tom just asked, so is that done at all, or is it done sometimes, or is it never done as far as like reference checks, like personal references?
So references are done as part of the police officer process and the application process, but for the rest of the positions, we do not do a reference check. We do previous employment and education checks.
Okay.
That's surprising.
Yeah.
I often wonder in some of these instances because of the fact that I'm thinking about not trying to pick on the police officer, but the police officer, and then I think there was another for the public servant, I think it was, that he was in here. Am I correct in that? I was looking at the questions. Is there a process where they're kind of in a group setting interacting with people? Has that ever been thought about and incorporating that kind of part as part of the hiring process? Because I think that a lot of times we can do good with questions, but how are we doing with it within group settings? I know that's hard via Zoom, but in group settings, has that ever been thought about?
Can you clarify what you mean by group settings?
Yeah, so sometimes when we hire, this is from educational background, but when we hire individuals who work with other people, we like to see how they engage in group settings. So we will give them a task where they're doing something as a group to determine leadership and observe their skills and how they interact with others. That also sometimes can lean into how they might deal with others who have a different personality and or different experiences. There may be conflict that arises within a group because on purpose, you may not give them all the tools that they need, but figuring out how they might navigate through like that space can sometimes provide some other experiences that may not always be able to be thought about through a just straight list of questions that are answered.
We currently do not do something like that. Yes, Tom?
Sorry to get hung up on this one slide, but like Dr. Williams was saying, I think the having a fairly consistent, rigorous process for hiring as well as retention when we get to those is important for every single position. And one of the ways that I've hired probably hundreds of people at my former job for 33 years and did pretty well with most of them. But one of the key questions, as Kyle was saying, was really how well do they work with others? You know, not just with our clients, but with each other, with consultants, with people below and above them. And that's one of the things that often comes out by making sure we always checked at least 2 or 3 references from their past experience and employment opportunities. Did they work well with other people, and how did they interact as a team member? So yeah, you can get into more questions and more validation of that, not just by asking the applicant, but also finding out their past work experience references. Anyway, I just wanted to piggyback on what he said.
Catherine?
I do a lot of consulting contract work. I've not worked for a full-time company for the last 10 years. And I can say for the last couple of years, hardly any company has ever requested for references. You know, I guess they just go with my reference from whichever, my work history and my background. I've hardly had anyone ask me for any references. And the ones that I've asked, which are very few, they've not called. They've not called the people who have given their references. And I think it's because maybe some companies are concerned that if someone gives a negative review, a negative recommendation, then it gets back and it just creates a lot of animosity. So I can say from my experience, I've not been asked by companies, and I've worked for quite a lot of companies recently. None of them has ever asked me for references. So I don't know whether it's something that is changing in terms of the work employment, or I just wanted to add that point.
And I think as the hiring and the retention teams begin their work, and we start to think about what recommendations based on the data that we collect, I think that's where some of these suggestions can come in. Are there some questions that would be a great opportunity to enhance the current set of questions that exist, et cetera? So I definitely say hold that thought, especially on the hiring team. Because that's likely a great suggestion, whether it's reference checks or whether it's just whatever question is asked. I think that definitely hold those thoughts.
I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next slide unless there are any other questions. And then this is, I presented a breakdown. The question was asked of what the diversity looked like for an interview panel. So this is a police officer interview panel data, since the majority of our positions are over there in at our largest position that we recruit for is our police officer.
I'm trying to understand the numbers. They don't add up to 100, so I'm just curious as to the breakdown.
I think it had a little bit to do with the rounding. So we had, this is based on a initial interview panel of 3.
Okay. Okay, so if there's, so I'm just to break this down. So if there's an interview panel of 3, I don't know how to, so I'm trying to make sure I frame my question correctly. Is that, let me ask this, is that typically the number of people who are part of the panel for the police officers?
For the initial interview, yes.
Okay. And those 3 people, that would typically be considered what you all call a panel?
That 3 would be considered the initial panel.
Okay.
And it seems like it's very heavily male out of those 3. So you have one female that was either, I guess, one of the demographics. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it also a 3-person panel for other positions other than police officers?
It's usually a 3-person panel, yes, for that initial interview.
Do they interview as a panel or is it individual interviews?
It's an interview as a panel.
Okay, okay.
I see Catherine's hand up, so I wanted to acknowledge that.
Oh, no, I already, that was initially, sorry, I should have lowered it. Sorry about that. Sorry about that.
I just wanted to make sure that I recognize that before I ask my other question.
Okay.
Have we ever, and this might be, I'm just asking, have we ever thought about asking, if we have police officers that are there, but are there other individuals that can be incorporated into the panel? Thinking like a civic worker or someone else to kind of help with the hiring process of the police officer? Or is it just the police officer?
That is currently not being utilized, but it's something that could be possibly explored.
Okay. I'm just thinking about, if we have, let's say, I'll pick us, for example, because we're in the committee, individuals from this committee that may, if we were talking about, you do a panel with officers and you do a panel kind of with civilians who are affiliated with the city, then that can kind of help. It can just kind of provide some other information, things that you might have witnessed or observed through questions that we provided that can also be taken into consideration.
Yeah, I would say that the closest right now to a civilian position would be with the HR person sitting on every interview. They would be considered that civilian position. Anything else before I move to the next slide?
Helena, so of the 3 people on the panel, is the HR representative considered one of the panelists, or is that a 4th individual?
It's considered one of the panelists.
So are the other 2 panelists from the police department?
They are,
or
yes.
from whatever department that would be interviewing the individual?
That is correct. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next slide here. The additional data was requested by department and asked to include the generation groups. So that information is updated into Basecamp for you guys to review, as well as the information of what is the data demographics for manager of people, as well as managers of data. The org chart was requested, so that copy has been uploaded into Basecamp, as well as the data was added to the slide. That org chart was as of the positions as of December 2020. So that is when, if you're looking at the data, that is when all of those the positions were captured. It was as of December 2020. And then you guys asked for some turnover reasons. And then here is a list of some of the reasons if someone did decide to share during an exit process of some of the reasons that they may have chose to leave the organization.
Do you have any it broken down by chance? And it sounds like it may be all manual, so it may be tough to aggregate the data, but I was just curious if you have it, like, was it 5% that, you know, left for benefits and, you know, that type of thing? Did you have a more specific breakdown, or were these just the more common trends?
These were the more common trends that we were seeing.
That's managed manually?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I put a question in the chat. Do we have turnover by department?
I can look at pulling that data for you.
It might highlight if there's a particular issue with a particular department that has high turnover. And it could be because of the type of job it is, or perhaps something wrong with the management or whatever policies maybe.
Yeah, I think we covered that a little bit in the first meeting.
Okay.
There's what would appear to be relatively high turnover in the police department. But you have to compare that data with other police departments. Apparently ours is pretty low comparatively.
Right.
I'm just curious too, Helena, do you all, and this may be something that ends up being like a subcommittee conversation, but just curious, you know, because I think it touches what I'm about to say, I think touches hiring, and I think it also touches retention, which is involving the people who do the job. So do you all ever have like work groups where maybe you are trying to improve a process to engage the people in like a PD role on, you know, any sort of like, hey, we're updating this, and, you know, and this process really, because most of our staff are PD, we want to make sure you all are involved in this process. Is that something that you all typically do when you are revising practices or policies?
We have done that, and before, for instance, when we were looking at updating our PTO accrual policy, we put together a team that represented several different departments to review that.
Okay.
I have a question regarding the managers of people. When I looked at the data, it looked like you have female 16.28% and male 83.72%. And I was wondering, are the men more likely? Because like when I look at the managers of processing, it looks like they're about the same. Is there a reason that we have such a low percentage for women in the managers of people?
I would need to look into that for you.
Okay. Well, I was just wondering if the managers of processes, whether, you know, why, if women are being promoted to manage processes, why it's not the same with the managers of people? So just was curious about it.
Okay.
Thank you.
And remind me, Helena, because I'm on this, I can't switch to the other screen, but did it also cover like promotional opportunities for staff? So from one, I don't know if you have that data, but was that part of what you provided? And if not, is that something you could provide?
So I didn't initially provide that. So you're looking for kind of promotional data of possible promotions within the city. That's something I can look into.
Yeah, that would be great, especially by race and by gender. I mean, all that's very, very helpful. Generation, all the things.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can look at that data.
Okay, that would be great. And I think this is your last slide, correct?
It is. It is.
Okay.
Helena, after reading our suggested reading from yesterday, one of the things that came up that I hadn't really thought about before is I know we've got a fair amount of data that's been given to us regarding demographics. When are y'all first and how are y'all obtaining the demographical information regarding race, gender, that sort of thing?
If someone decides to self-disclose during the application process, we'll get that data there, but they're not required. So sometimes we do not get that data until they are actually hired as an employee. And
so does that mean there's nothing in the application documents that have any of that demographic information for them to indicate it there? Or are you saying that it is there, but not required for them to answer?
Yeah, the information is provided to them, but they don't have to answer that during the application process. They can choose to just not answer it.
Can we get a copy of the application?
Sure.
Is there a standard? Okay, that would be great to have too. And you said you all use an applicant tracking system, is that correct?
We do, yes.
Okay. And remind me, who do you all use again? Is it Paycom?
We use Paycom.
Paycom, okay.
Yep.
Okay. William, did I miss anything?
I don't think so. And we're right here before the end of the hour.
Okay. Any final questions from the group? All right, let me just
All right,
check.
if there's not any questions, Tuan and I will definitely get together after this and discuss with both the hiring and retention sub-teams how we want to go forward with putting together some specific issues and assignments, and then she and I will both reach out to our respective team members to try to get the ball rolling on that.
Sounds good.
Perfect. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
Stay dry.
Yes.
Night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.